Hey everybody, it's Julie. Welcome to Hello Monday. Today I'm going to be working with Inchy Art Squares. These are a really cool museum grade preservation type mat board, and they accept all different kinds of wet and dry mediums. You can stamp on them, you can watercolor on them, you can heat emboss on them, paint on them, do marker work on them, ink work. They're just really cool, and the nice thing about them is that they're so thick and sturdy that they can withstand all kinds of different art mediums that you would want to apply to them. And I'm going to be doing some watercolor work because the surface does accept a wet medium. And I'm going to work with the Mondo Poinsettia stamp set. I've just positioned the stamp set there on the lid of the Misty so that I know where I'm stamping on my art square. And I'm going to prep the surface with an anti-static pouch so that when I do my heat embossing, the embossing powder only sticks to where that sticky Versamark embossing ink is. This is my favorite go-to embossing ink. So I'm going to go ahead and close the lid there and just apply firm pressure. This is a thicker than normal material, so I do want to make sure I get an even impression all the way across the whole image. And then I'm going to apply some Hero Arts white embossing powder. This is a great smooth finish, bright white embossing powder. I love it for white embossing my images. So now I've preheated my heat gun for about 30 seconds, and it is going to take a little bit longer to heat emboss this image because the Inchy square is much thicker than regular cardstock is. So I'm going to take a little bit of time there and go over it, make sure I've got everything nice and high gloss, smooth finish, and there's no grainy spots left there on the surface. And then because it is so thick, I did want to punch a hole to attach this to my card front. So I'm going to use my Crop-A-Dile to punch through all those layers. It'd be hard to do that with a regular hole punch. And I'm going to be using my Kuretake Ganzai Tambi watercolors. I'm going to start by putting some clean, fresh water on one of the petals and just painting over the top of it with water. And then I'm going to load some color onto the tip of my brush. And instead of doing strokes, I'm actually just going to kind of tap that color into the water and let the water do the work of spreading the color. And I'm going to speed up the camera while I'm doing this because it's pretty much a repeated process as I'm going through this, but you'll see me constantly applying fresh water to each of the images, the petals of the flower, and then loading up that brush with color and dropping it in and letting it spread out. And I'm just going to continue in this fashion until all my petals have a base coat of color. And you'll notice I'm not stroking or painting the way you would think I would paint with watercolor. I'm just dropping the color in and letting it disperse there. So I'm getting towards the other side there and dropping that color in. And I love the effect of this. It's fun to kind of watch the colors get wicked out by the water. And once I'm done with that, I can go ahead and repeat the very same technique towards the center of the poinsettia and get some yellow colors laid down, and then I will also add some green. Now, at this stage of the game, I decided I wanted to add some shading and shadows in the background to help give my poinsettia a little bit more definition and pop on the surface of the art square. So I initially started with a really soft blue, and I decided it wasn't as intense as I wanted. So now I'm coming in over the top, and I'm using the exact same method I used earlier where I'm laying down clean water, but this time I'm painting over the blue with a deeper, darker teal green type color that's going to give me more contrast and more shading and depth there in the shadows behind the poinsettia. And this will really help all those petals really pop and define them. I'm also going to add a little bit more of that teal green there and just do some slight shading there to the bottoms of those little stamens in the center of the poinsettia. And this is really going to help provide some contrast and make the whole thing really pop as we're moving along here. Now at this point I could have left everything alone, but I decided that my poinsettia needed just a little bit more depth and pop. So I'm going to come in and intensify where the petals meet towards the center of the flower and just add more of that same red color just to intensify it there. And this will help give my poinsettia just more depth and personality instead of just a flat wash of color. One of my favorite things to do after I've finished watercoloring something and it's completely dry is to add some splatters. A lot of times I add black, but this time I decided to take the Kuretake Gansai Tambi white color and load that onto an acrylic block and onto my brush and kind of flick it around. And I'm just messing around here with how I'm splattering it until I'm happy with what I get. And then I can go ahead and let that dry completely before I finish off the edges of my mat board. I wanted it to look like it had been soldered with silver, so I'm going to fake it by using some silver embossing powder. And I'm going to ink up 3 edges of my mat board here with the Versamark ink pad, and then I'm going to dip each of those 3 edges into some silver embossing powder and just kind of get a light coating there just on the edges, flicking off the excess. And then I'm also going to take my tweezers to hang on to this just to keep my fingers safely out of the way, and I can hang on to that without getting burned. Preheated my heat gun for about 30 seconds, and then I'm going to come in and heat up that powder, and I'm going to heat from both the back side and the front side as well as the edges just to make sure everything gets very nice and embossed instead of any bits that are kind of gritty and sandy and didn't get embossed. I want it to have that really cool soldered effect. And then once I'm done doing all 3 of those edges, I'm going to apply more Versamark ink to that one final edge so that I have all 4 edges embossed this way. So I'm just going to repeat the process until all the edges are completely embossed. And you could add more layers of embossing powder. I actually repeated this process twice to get an extra thick layer of that silver embossing powder on there and increase the effect of that soldered, faux soldered edge. Now, one of the nice things about doing your artwork on the inchy squares is that because they are thick and they have some heft to them, especially the larger sizes would make really great holiday ornaments on the tree. So I decided to make this a detachable ornament, and I'm just going to pierce a hole through the front of my black card front here and attach that to the card with some silver metallic twine. And because I'm working alone here in the studio, flying solo, I don't have anybody to put their pinky down on the center of my bow to keep it nice and tight. So my trusty tweezers, you often see me use tweezers in my videos. I have 2 pairs that I rely on. One is simple angled tweezers, and then this pair by EK Success has a reverse action or cross lock feature, meaning when you let go of them, they clamp down. And so that will hold the center of my bow nice and tight so I can finish tying it with my 2 other hands. Then I can trim that off and finish the card. I am always mixing and matching my stamp sets, so I borrowed a sentiment from a set we released 2 years ago called 'Tis the Season. Went ahead and stamped that with black ink on a scrap of Neenah Solar White, and then I'm just going to add some foam mounting tape to the back of that so I can pop it up there on the front of my card. This is a very simple card front, but I think it lets the poinsettia there on the mat board really be showcased in this way. So I'll get that on there and the whole card is finished. I think it turned out very elegant. I love the fact that it can detach from the card front and can be hung on the tree. We have more still shots and details available at the Classroom blog. All the supplies are available at ellenhutson.com. Thanks for watching.